let's come to the yeast dough section. So before we start to do our first dough, I want you to understand a little bit more about yeast. Yeast are actually microorganisms which multiply when you give them the right conditions. And what are these conditions? It's temperature, moisture, and food. So all you need to have at home is a warm kitchen, a little bit of time, and understand these conditions and how to treat them. So what is yeast doing? When these microorganisms are growing, they are fermenting. So they are causing carbon dioxide and alcohol. The carbon dioxide gives you the gas which evaporates and gives you the power structure, and the alcohol will expand in the oven as well and gives you a nice dough structure. So with yeast, again, a lot of people are afraid to use it because they don't know how to work with it, or they say, it's not working in my kitchen. But with yeast, again, you really have to take care about your surrounding conditions and just take a little time. So the dough really tells you when it's ready, and it's depending on, is it summer, is it winter, how warm is it in your kitchen, how much time have you given for proving. So the dough should be at least kind of doubled, and then it's ready. And I'm showing you now how to do the first yeast dough. There are different techniques how to work with yeast. You can do it right away, leave it out for 2 hours for the proving time. For that, you would always need a higher amount of yeast in order to work. There's also another technique which I will show you later on. It's a so-called poolish technique. So I'm doing a pre-dough where I need much less yeast in order to ferment and to be ready. And for that poolish, we will put it in the fridge. And I think this is what a lot of people don't know, that you can store your dough in the fridge. But that's a second technique I will show you later on with a different recipe. Let me show you how to make a cherry streusel cake. This is how we pronounce it in German. It's Streusel, not Streusel or whatsoever. And this is a recipe I really love. It's actually a recipe which I did with my grandma very often in the kitchen. And I have veganized it, which is quite easy because you're just substituting milk to plant-based milk and butter to a plant-based butter or margarine. So these are the ingredients for the dough. We have sugar, we have the yeast, we have a little bit of salt, we have the plant-based milk, the margarine or butter, and the flour. So here again, I'm using a strong white flour or bread flour because I need a gluten structure to develop. Now I'm taking the yeast. You already see it, so it's the fresh yeast. Make sure it's not sticky or slimy because then it's not good anymore. It should have like a palish, grayish color, and it is good to know that you can keep those up for a week in your fridge. Just make sure that you put it into a container, in a glass container or plastic container. It will be better for the storage and will be kept longer in the fridge. You can even freeze it. So you couldn't put fresh yeast in the freezer and just take it out whenever you need it. You just put the microorganism to sleep. Let's put it this way. So I'm taking my fresh yeast. You see it's 30 grams approximately. And I'm just putting it into my milk. The milk shouldn't be ice cold out of the refrigerator because that's, again, something the yeast does not like. It needs temperature. So I'm having my milk at room temperature. You could even heat it up a little bit, but be really careful because the microorganism, they will start to die at 40 degrees. So the best temperature to work with yeast is around 30, 37 degrees, where they get the maximum out of it. So I'm just putting everything in there. And again, you learned yeast need moisture, food, and temperature. So I'm even adding a little bit of the sugar to give them a little bit to eat. And then I'm mixing everything. And also another thing which you should know, never incorporate fat or salt with the yeast first, because that will stop the growing of the microorganism as well. So this is why you do it separately, and then it's no problem and the yeast will be able to grow. So I'm mixing everything so that the yeast is dissolved in the milk, and then I'm having my kitchen machine ready. Of course, you can do it by hand, but again, it's very hard. It's a hard work. It's a workout, let's put it this way. So do your workout and then have a treat. I will do it with the kitchen machine. It's much easier for me right now. So what I'm doing, I put everything in the kitchen machine. So first the liquid, then the sugar, then the flour, then the butter and the salt. Same thing when you want to do it with your hands. Just put everything in a bowl and start mixing. I will do that right away. What it does need, it needs approximately 8 to 10 or maybe even 12 minutes in order to really have the right gluten structure. There's a special test which I will show you how to make sure that the dough is ready. It's a so-called window test, we call it. And you really make sure that you're stretching the dough and that you can almost see through, and it has like a gummy texture to it. If you achieved that texture, then the dough is ready. So let's do it. So now I'm having here my kitchen machine with the hook attached, so it's important to use the hook. And then, as I said, I'm just giving in the liquid first. So this is my plant-based milk with the yeast, which is dissolved in there. Add everything. Adding my sugar, my flour. Then I'm taking a pinch of salt. Why do I do that? A lot of people or a lot of cooks I have discussions with. Some, they don't really like to have a salt in a sweet dough or dessert. I always put it in because I think it's much nicer to the taste profile later on. But this is again up to you. It's nothing you need for leavening or whatsoever. Then I have my butter. This is actually out of the refrigerator, so it's no problem if it is cold. I already cut it a little bit in cubes. And what I'm doing now, I'm kneading it with the machine first on a medium till everything is combined, and then on a higher speed for approximately 8 to 10 minutes till the dough is really smooth and nice. And then we will do the window test and I show you when the dough is ready. Very much depending on what kind of equipment you have at home. I have that equipment, and later on when you have high speed, I need to make sure to stay with the machine, otherwise it will maybe drop or fall off. So make sure to stay with your kitchen machine. Our dough is ready. We have kneaded approximately 8 to 10 minutes. And what you see after a while, the dough becomes really smooth. And the result should be that there is nothing sticking to the edge of the bowl. And you see it's a very shiny, very doughy result. And this is how you're doing the window test. I'm just taking a piece of the dough. Then I'm stretching it. And you see, it's almost like you're able to see through. It should not rip too much, and it's almost like a chewing gum. So you see, it's very, very nice and smooth. So I leave it in my bowl. I just cover it with a fresh kitchen towel and leave it there for approximately 1 hour, 2 hours. But again, the dough will tell you when it's ready. It should have kind of doubled. And now I'm going to show you how to make the crumble, or how we call it in German, der Streusel. So I have my flour, I have butter, and I have sugar. Of course, there are different combinations. I'm just showing you a plain one. You could, for example, add some oats, give some structure. You can add some spices, such as cinnamon, vanilla, tonka. So it's really up to you and up to your tastes. So what I'm doing is I'm incorporating the butter now to the flour. So I'm adding the fat, so the margarine, the butter, with the flour first. So I'm dusting it. I will explain that later on in the short crust pastry section. So I have my cold butter, and for that it's good if you have cold hands because you want to work quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm just smashing the butter to get a sandy structure. Now I've dusted it a little bit. So for the crumble it's not so important. I'm adding my sugar. And after that is ready, so I want a sandy structure, and of course the bigger the crumble should be, the bigger you leave it, the finer you want it, the finer you prepare it. And those crumbles are easy to make. You see it's done within like a minute. So you store this in the refrigerator before you're using it. You could even freeze it if you want to and have it ready whenever you need it. So I'm combining everything. I want some bigger crumbles later on, so I'm going to leave a little bigger lumps. Also really nice, you could add some cocoa powder. I will do that later on for another dish. Gives a nice texture, nice smell, and a different color. And again, play around, you know, be creative. For example, if you have like a girl's birthday party, you could add some beetroot juice and then you get like a pinkish color. That would be nice too. So that is kind of the structure I'm looking for. It's really like building a sandcastle. So that's done. I'm covering it and put it in the refrigerator. Okay guys, now we're coming to the Streusel crumble cherry cake. The dough has rested, you will see. It really doubled in size. So now it's ready. I'm having a baking paper. I'm flouring it a little bit. Then I'm rolling it out. It will be a huge cake, guys. And it's very traditional here in Germany to bake in baking trays, to have rectangular cakes, which you can, you know, cut into your pieces you desire. It's easy to make, you know, it's especially what, you know, women do at home, you know, when they have guests. It's easy, you will feed a lot of people with that. Of course, if this is too much for you guys, take half the recipe. You can play around with the toppings, the streusel, the crumble, so be wild. So I'm having my dough, you see it's very elastic. Just flouring it a little bit on top, not too much, you know? So, rolling it out. Start to work evenly. After I'm rolling it out, I let the dough rest again for approximately 10 minutes. This is due to the fact that you see there's a lot of air incorporated due to the fermentation of the yeast. And what I'm doing now, I'm flattening it. So I'm giving the yeast and the dough again time to rise up. So before we're putting on the cherries and the crumbles, I'm letting it rest. Now I've rolled out my dough flat. It's approximately 1/2 centimeter. I'm taking my baking tray. And it's easier to do it on a flat table instead of doing it in the tray. So I always do it on a flat counter. I'm just going to lift it. And again, now it needs to rest to get back its strength. So I'll leave it approximately for 10 to 50 minutes at room temperature. And in the meanwhile, I'm preheating the oven at 175 degrees upper and lower heat. I would recommend to cover your dough just with a towel. And that's it. This is the dough, it has rested. I'll have some cherries here. I usually buy them already prepared in a glass, it's more convenient. Of course, you can do the cherries by your own, just cook them, add a little bit of sugar. If you buy them already in a glass, just make sure, because you know they're full of liquid. What I'm usually doing, I'm putting it into a sieve overnight so that all the liquid is drained. If you're doing that, make sure that you're using a plastic sieve. Otherwise, if you're using a metal one, it could rust. Do that overnight so that the liquid is really out of it. So I'm having the cherries, just putting it on the dough. And again, your imagination is wild. Just take whatever fruits you like. Take some apricots, apples, pears. So you're very flexible in terms of what kind of fruits you're using. And the crumbles, just take them out of the fridge just before you're pouring everything together. Otherwise the butter melts again. And that's the thing we don't want. So I'm adding all the cherries. It looks like a lot, but you will need that later on, I can tell you. Maybe even for Christmas, you know, you can add some Christmas spices, cinnamon, cardamom, whatever you like. Or for the people who like alcohol, you can even add some alcohol to it. I would, you know, soak the cherries maybe in rum. Let me spread the cherries a little bit more even. And then I'm going to take my crumbles, putting them on top. My oven is preheated, 175 degrees. And I'll bake it for approximately 40 to 45 minutes. You will see that the end result should be golden brownish. So you can use the toothpick, just pick it into the dough and when it comes out clean and not liquid, it will be ready. So again, it's really up to your oven. The time might differ. Our sherry crumble cake is ready. It cooled down, and actually I'm a professional, but I was baking for the first time in that oven, and what really happened, the edges became slightly brown. They were not overcooked or anything, but we were quite hungry, so we ate them. No problem. So I'm going to cut it now. It's really up to you how many people you want to serve, how big that piece of cake is. I'm just doing these kind of slices. It's very common. You will find these kind of cakes all over in Germany in bakeries because they are so easy to do. You can actually, if you're not able to finish all of it, you can freeze it. It's no problem. Freeze it, take it out one day before and bake it. Or you can even bake it frozen. Alrighty. And you see how fluffy the dough is? It's so good.